Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with the Spain News Update, and the Sanchez government is patting itself on the back because yesterday they managed to pass the biggest state budgets in Spain's history, but more about that in just a moment. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel by buying merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your continuing support. Now, let's get into the news, and as I said, Spain's coalition government is extremely happy with itself at the moment because yesterday it passed the biggest budget in its history. Spain's Chamber of Deputies has approved the biggest budget in the country's history after Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez won the support of a Catalan pro-independence party in return for a deal setting a quota for regional languages on digital platforms such as Netflix. The budget, which includes 27 billion euros in EU recovery funds, was backed by an ample majority of 188 votes in the chamber on Thursday and now heads to the country's Senate. It consolidates Sánchez hold on power at the same time as highlighting Spain's fragmented politics. The agreement between the minority coalition government and the Catalan Republican left, which also contained a promise not to renovate a police headquarters in Barcelona, was only part of a patchwork of budget deals with smaller parties. Other commitments included provisions for children's television in the Basque Country, help for victims of asbestos, incentives for employers offering a shorter working week, and greater regulation of artificial intelligence. So, there we go. The Sanchez government yesterday getting its budgets approved in the parliament with the help of pro-independence parties, one from Catalonia and one from the Basque Country. And, as we saw in the article, one of the main deals struck between the central government and the Catalonian Republican left relates to regional language quotas on platforms like Netflix. And as we can see from this headline, Netflix feels cheated by Sanchez's agreement with ERC on the 6% Catalan language quota. The government's pact with ERC to implement, in exchange for approving the 2022 budget, a 6% quota of co-official languages in audiovisual productions is understood by Netflix as a new obligation that Pedro Sánchez never spoke to them about during his roadshow in Silicon Valley last July. Just a few days after the government crisis, the president went to California to present to the audiovisual multinational, among other companies, his plan to turn Spain into the Hollywood of Europe. He promised them a red carpet to attract projects, but now they have found themselves with this agreement with the Independentistas, a measure about which little is yet known. They have, therefore, a similar feeling to that of big investment funds when they found out that the housing law was going to contemplate the regulation of rents. So Netflix feeling cheated that they weren't told about this regional language quota by the Prime Minister when he visited them in July. Some more people now finding out that when it comes to telling the truth, Prime Minister Sánchez can't be trusted. And it's not only Netflix that is feeling cheated here in Spain. A lot of Spaniards very unhappy that Sánchez is doing deals with these pro-independence parties. Now, Spain's economic data is a bit sketchy at the moment. Some groups, for example, the European Union, have recently revised forecasts for 2021 and 2022. And according to this headline from Bloomberg, Spain's economic revival may be stronger than it looks. A booming jobs market and surging tax revenue have economists arguing that disappointing data don't accurately reflect the speed of Spain's recovery from the euro area's deepest recession. Growth numbers that missed expectations in the past 2 quarters have turned the Spanish economy from a potential leader of the region's post-pandemic revival to a laggard trailing nearby France and Italy. Many experts aren't convinced, however. They argue that high-frequency data and indicators like demand for construction materials and a jump in credit card spending paint a much rosier picture for the Eurozone's 4th biggest economy. The reality will be vital for the government, which is defending this year's forecast for 6.5% expansion, the fastest pace since 1973. Job creation is near record highs and tax collection keeps beating expectations. How can consumption be down? There's something missing here, said Jordi Sevilla, a former government minister and senior advisor at Madrid-based consultancy Llorente y Cuenca. So Spain's economy not all doom and gloom, according to former socialist minister Jordi Sevilla. But then again, what would you expect a former socialist minister to say? Another economist, however, and current European MP Luis Garciano, is a little bit more skeptical when it comes to the economy and the recovery. And as we can see here, he is quoted as saying, if Spain spends badly or fails to execute European funds, it could lose another decade. decade. In an interview, he was asked the question, "You wrote in 2011 that there was a risk of losing a decade. Has this been the case? Will we lose another?" And the reply, "Yes, we have already lost one. In 2011, I wrote a book together with other economists entitled 'Nothing is Free: How to Prevent the Prodigious Decade from Being Followed by a Lost Decade.' The reality is that we unfortunately lost one decade, and I fear we may lose another." "On what basis do you say that we lost the previous one?" he was asked, and the reply, "that we neither grew nor solved the serious problems of our economy, starting with the total growth of GDP per capita in the 13 years from the peak of the previous cycle in 2007 to the pre-pandemic peak in 2019, the total growth has been 3.36%. In annual growth terms, a staggering 0.28% per year. In short, nothing. We only have to look at our backwardness in research and development, school dropouts, and temporary employment. But there are now more European funds. Can Spain lose another decade in spite of this?" And the answer, yes, if we spend badly or fail to spend the funds. The European Commission's analysis indicates that the government is entrusting the economic recovery to investments financed by Europe with the recovery plan. Spain is by far the EU country that will depend most on European funds because other countries such as Italy, France, and Germany will rely more on measures financed from their national budgets, he said. So, there we go. According to that economist and European MP, Spain is at risk of losing another decade if it fails to execute European funds well. And why does he say this? Because he's seen it all before. Now let's have a look at a summary of the health situation in Spain, and we can see that the accumulated incidence rate for the last 14 days now up to 160. There are 3,273 people hospitalised with COVID around the country, and there are 571 COVID patients in ICU. Now Spain's neighbour to the west, Portugal, has announced more COVID restrictions, and the country is going to close for a week after Christmas and ask for flight tests even for vaccinated people. Portugal is preparing a preventative lockdown in the first week of 2022 to face what is expected to be a tough January pandemic after the Christmas holidays. From the 2nd to the 9th of January, teleworking will be compulsory and schools, bars and nightclubs will be closed to avoid a spike in contagions after family gatherings. We have to be attentive to the situation, try to anticipate whenever possible and listen to the scientific community, said Prime Minister Antonio Costa during the announcement of the new containment measures for the most vaccinated country in the European Union. In addition, Portugal will require from the 1st of December a coronavirus test with a negative result for all passengers entering the country by air, even if they have a vaccination certificate, and will toughen sanctions against airlines that allow people to board without health checks. The government will activate the state of calamity, a step below the national emergency, which gives it the legal framework necessary to implement the announced measures. So Portugal announcing that they are going to shut down the country for a week in January in order to avoid a similar health crisis to the one that they had earlier this year. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from previous videos. One here from John: "Thank you very much for the quality video, informative in a good way. As the Julian's comment that Spanish healthcare is more expensive than in the US, all the figures and statistics show that the healthcare in the US is far and away the most expensive in the world." Yeah, John, thanks for the comment, and referring to a comment that we saw the other day from Julian, as you said there in your comment, who said that healthcare in Spain is way more expensive than in the United States. We also saw a comment from somebody the other day that said that they pay between $400 and $700 a month to access healthcare in the United States. And I said that I pay around €300 every month to access the Spanish healthcare system. And you're right, I think that all figures and statistics point to the fact that the US has the most expensive healthcare system in the world, so end of debate. One here from Marta: "Public or private health, what's better?" Well, last I checked, I haven't seen people take to the streets anywhere demanding a privatised healthcare system. Here in the US, on the other hand, I have seen people on the streets demanding public healthcare. Yeah, Marta, thanks for the comment, and I don't think that I've ever seen anybody take to the streets demanding a privatised healthcare system either. In fact, the only healthcare system protests that I have seen here in Spain are by people wanting to keep it public. I'm not saying that private healthcare should be excluded, but I don't think it should come at the cost of a public system. And I'm also not saying that the Spanish healthcare system is the best in the world, but the experience that I have had with the system has been pretty good. And as I said the other day, let's hope that it stays that way. One here from Brian: "I started following these daily posts many months ago, and it's always been my intention to buy a property in Spain and soak up the good weather along with the relaxed Spanish lifestyle. The political instability within Spain and EU interference is not looking positive though. Keep up the good work, Stu. Yeah, Brian, thanks for the comment, and unfortunately there has been a fair bit of political instability in this country over the last decade or so. But I don't think that should put you off buying a property here in Spain, soaking up the Spanish sun and enjoying the relaxed lifestyle. And when it comes to EU interference in this country, some people see it as a good thing. One here from Ray. I looked up information on Yolanda Díaz and she is in fact a member of the Spanish Communist Party. Whether she holds radical opinions or not, I cannot say. I doubt it since she was elected to the city council in Ferrol, a very conservative city in Galicia. In fact, the city where Francisco Franco, caudillo de España por la gracia de Dios, was born. She has a university degree in law from the University of Santiago de Compostela and 3 postgraduate degrees. She was also elected to the Galician Parliament. Whether you agree with her political opinions or not, she must be a very intelligent woman. Pedro Sánchez chose her to be his Minister of Labour and Social Economy, and Pedro Sánchez is no communist. Yeah, Ray, thanks for the comment, and referring to an article that we saw from the Times the other day that said that communist Yolanda Díaz could be a future Prime Minister of this country. And they hinted at the fact that the first female Prime Minister of this country will either be Yolanda Díaz or Isabel Díaz Ayuso, the current Premier of Madrid. And to be honest, I don't know if she has radical opinions or not, and I don't think there's any doubt that she is an intelligent person. And Pedro Sánchez did name her as the Labour Minister in the current coalition government, but I don't think he had much choice. If he wanted to be Prime Minister, he had to jump into bed with the Podemos party, and they held the cards. And that is also ironic because he also said that he wouldn't be able to sleep at night if he had to form a government with Podemos. But he did, and the rest is history. One here from Julia. I live in Valladolid, Castilla y Leon. We have a phone app to access all our health-related information, as well as access to our COVID-19 certificate. Last week I made travel arrangements and decided to access my app and downloaded my certificate, which I managed to do without any issue. One of my students in Malaga shared with me that they too have an app, and she was able to access her certificate on an app provided by the Andalusia authorities. Yeah, Julia, thanks for the comment, and there is a lot of talk about COVID-19 certificates here in Spain at the moment. Some autonomous communities are pushing for them, some others are not. For example, here in Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso is not pushing for COVID certificates, but in places like Cantabria, they are pushing pretty hard. I too have access to one in my phone in my health app, but as I said, here in Madrid, I don't need it. So if you are living in Spain, I think it's fairly easy to get your hands on one of these certificates if you are double vaccinated, regardless of the autonomous community that you are in, and probably a good idea to get a downloaded copy in case you want to travel around the country. And finally, one here from Chris. Where's the dog gone? Yeah, Chris, thanks for the comment, and the answer to your question is that the dog has not gone anywhere. She's sitting on the couch there behind me. You just can't see her. And the reason you can't see her in these videos on a daily basis is because she prefers that side of the couch. But for anybody who thought that she had disappeared, here she is. On that note, I'll wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the video out as you normally do. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. We'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.